So I make electricity from the sun. With that electricity, I make water out of air. With that water, it would go into the pressure tank.
Mm-hmm.
That pressure tank would say, go to the water heater. The
Mm-hmm.
water heater was a heat pump water heater, which we would use the electricity from the sun to heat the water heater.
Right.
The byproduct of the water heater is air conditioning. So that's the only air conditioning we would use, is we'd pipe the air conditioning out of the water heater and into the house.
Yeah.
And then the shower you take a shower, and that shower water goes out to my fruit trees in the front yard. And that was all gravity fed.
Wow.
So make electricity, make water, heat the water with electricity from the sun, shower, and then feed the fruit trees.
Hello, this is Izumi Tanaka with Home Green Homes Podcast. I had the privilege of talking to Ryan McEvoy, a principal and founder of Gaia Development. While Gaia Development has an impressive track record of developing more than 500 sustainable buildings around the world, our conversation was about Campbell Collective, which is a residential property he bought and renovated in the middle of Los Angeles, guided by the Living Building Challenge, garnering Zero Energy certification. With regenerative and permacultural design, the place is now an urban oasis, providing the community with fruits, vegetables, and herbs throughout the year. Let's hear how he achieved it. So, Ryan, thank you so much for being here with me today. And I would love for you to tell me about where you came from. And I'm always interested in the story, how we end up in this space of doing regenerative, sustainable, green development, and how we ended up in this space.
Yeah. So my background, I was born and raised in Pasadena. And we used to capture rainwater because even though I'm in my mid-40s, we've been in a drought in LA ever since I was a kid. We used to have a shower head that felt like a fire hose, but I guess it was the old school water efficient shower heads. But yeah, so I went to college in Santa Cruz, and my major was community studies, a major geared towards social change, environmental justice, and how to create change in community. I then went and did an internship, which we're required to do. We're supposed to do an internship for 6 months anywhere in the world. And I went down to Australia, and I was working on a regenerative program down there on a property, and I was studying permaculture at the Permaculture Research Institute. So I really got my hands dirty at Bill Mollison's property in Australia, which was great. And then I came back and I wrote my thesis on energy. And so in the year 2000, it's about 140 pages, but it was all on energy and where it comes from, how it's produced, global warming, nuclear waste. What does the IPCC say even back then? Back then it was the Kyoto Protocol. What is Harvard, Stanford, Yale? What are they all saying? And once you spend a year writing a thesis on energy and climate change and know that all these hurricanes and storms and flooding and drought and loss of habitat is imminent, it's kind of hard to not dedicate the rest of your life towards it, at least for me. Yeah. So I've been working on energy ever since then. But when I graduated, my family was doing a real estate development project up in Pasadena. And so we were the 12th lead project ever done. We're number 224 in the world. It's one of the first 250 projects. And nobody really done lead. So I became a lead AP in 2002. And we're the first lead speculative commercial building ever built in the world.
Wow.
And so then people started saying, hey, how do you do lead? How do you do it? So while the goal is to keep doing development, we end up being more consultants because we have the experience on development. So we could speak the language of costs and, contractors and change orders and specifications and all that. So that's where then that spun out. So Gaia was created in 2005. I see. And we mainly focus on lead, energy modeling, commissioning, carbon footprint, owner rep for solar. We've done our own solar PPAs. We have our water company working on advanced water technologies, but mainly we're consultants.
I see.
And so my property is more my passion pet project. Yeah. So at Gaia, our clients are more national
Right.
developers,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of industrial developers. We did the W Hotel at Hollywood and Vine. I was on that for like 10 years. Different, Google headquarters in Irvine. So we work on commercial buildings, UCLA, UC San Diego. But we don't really work on residentials. We've done like one or two residentials, but we don't work in residential.
Right.
But of course, my home is going to be as sustainable as I can possibly make it.
Right.
So that's why we're talking today. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's impressive. I noticed I was looking at your website and looking at all the projects that you worked on. It's quite impressive. And it's no wonder that you want to do something for your own home. And I find it interesting that that you are doing LEED, and now we're going to talk about your home, that you have all these petals from Living Future Institute. So
Yeah.
let's talk about your home. We are calling it Campbell Collective. That's
Yeah.
a case study, right?
Yeah.
And you earned 3 petals of living
Yeah.
building challenge.
Yeah.
And I have a living future accreditation, LFA,
Yeah.
but
There you go.
yeah, I know. I do have the accreditation, but I can't say that I feel quite versed, about the Living Future
Yeah.
accreditation or Living Challenge, uh, uh, Living Building Challenge, and so forth. So you can explain to us, briefly about Living Challenge, Building Challenge,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and maybe you can tell me why you chose to go with Living Building certification as opposed to LEED.
Yeah. That's all very good questions. So
Mm.
I'll start with Living Building Challenge. It was created by ILFI, International Living Future Institute. Jason McLennan said, hey, LEED doesn't go far enough. We need to have net zero energy, net zero water. Nothing in the building can be on the EPA red list of concern. So 0 toxins, produce all your own energy, use no combustible fuels, manage all your water on site, produce it on site, manage it on site. So it's definitely a step above the usual certification.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this home it's an existing home built in the 40s that I was rehabbing. And I wasn't doing a huge gut rehab. So I wasn't ripping everything out and bringing it down to the studs. I wasn't ripping out the bathroom and the kitchen. So a little bit different. LEED for homes. It works for some people, and I don't want to be too, I don't want to put LEED for homes down, but it was really kind of a LEED for new construction morphed into homes and shoved into a home program. I don't think it's as, I think there's opportunity for improvement, but it's not really designed for an existing home.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't want any combustible fuels. I don't want any toxins in my home.
Right.
I produce water on site. I put it all to my fruit trees. And so Living Building Challenge was the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
I do have my own opinion of the certification, and I'm not really a huge fan after going through it, and wouldn't really recommend it always to other people for a variety of reasons. It's not really designed for an existing building.
Yeah.
For example, local regional materials and your carbon footprint. We aren't building a new structure, so I'm not getting local regional points, but yet 98% of that structure I saved. So had I demoed it, taken it across the street and brought it back, I would have got my regional points. And you have to have a certain amount of regional points.
Right.
So there's
But
some.
you didn't even move them.
I didn't move them. So had I just chopped it down, taken it across the street, given it to my neighbor, and then bought it from my neighbor, I would have gotten. So there's some items that, that don't work well for me. Some donations to certain nonprofits or other things. I'm not against that. Just, I think the program is not designed for existing buildings.
Yeah.
And so we did not get full certification, even though we made more water on site than we used in a year. We produced more electricity than we ever used, and we used no combustible fuel. and every material we used was red list free.
Yeah.
We didn't get certified.
Wow.
So, and I think there's maybe 300 people have tried, maybe 18 to 20 have gotten certified.
That's amazing.
So it's very rigorous, and I agree with the rigor. I just think that there's, I think, I don't know. I think there's opportunities to be a little bit more flexible and to work with owners or developers on the certification to ensure they get certified. If you're meeting the intent with LEED, you get the point.
Yeah.
And their reference guide document is okay. You know, LEED has it a little bit better put together.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, there are so many different certifications out there right now, and I would say that no one is perfect, and they all have a lot of rooms for improvement. But I really love, living building certification is that, that for the water and energy and carbon, they require to be net positive, not above, like you said, it goes above LEED standard, and you also have to keep it up, right? You have to keep
to do it for a year.
Yeah,
where LEED, you do that for LEED for existing buildings, but LEED for new construction is just building it. And Living Building Challenge, you have to prove it. In the year window that we did it, we only had 5 inches, 5.25 inches of rain. This last year, we had too much rain. It was so crazy. And even the summer, we've never gotten, I've been collecting rainwater for 11 years on this property. We have never gotten 3 inches of rain in the middle of the summer.
I know.
There's maybe been 3 times we've had like a ½ inch to an inch one time in the summer.
Yeah.
Never 3 inches and then another ½ inch and an inch. I mean, it's been real crazy.
Right. So what did you do with the water from the last?
I store it all. I mean, I have tons of water storage. In a ½ inch rain event, I think I collect about 2,300 gallons in a ½ inch rain event across the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you store them? You store them underground, or do you have your rain barrels above ground?
I have some rain barrels above ground, and right now I'm in the process of digging like a pondless creek. So it's a water feature that drops through the ground. So there's no pond, but it's storage underground. So I'm going to store water underground. But it's all been above ground storage, which is easier to gravity feed the water.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So now, with the Living Building Challenge, there are 7 petals, and you earned 3 out of 7. So
so we would have gotten energy, but I think you're supposed to buy credits or something. And I'm like, I produce 125% of the annual energy use. So, that was one that we
I'm surprised that you didn't get energy. I was surprised when I was reading through your website, and I'm surprised that you didn't get water or energy petal, where it sounds like you're net positive, but that didn't.
So the water issues that they want us to spend $5,000 on a civil engineer to do a site survey.
Oh my God.
And verify the stormwater that went off of my driveway. There was a little area of my driveway that goes into dirt that percolates into the ground. But because I didn't have a civil engineer signing off, we didn't get that. But the thing is that we capture all the rain on the property except for a little bit of the driveway that does percolate into the dirt. But I didn't have a stamped engineer record of that.
Oh, I see.
And then I had atmospheric water generators. So we were producing water out of air. So it's like a big dehumidifier that we would run. And so with 5.5 inches of rain, it's not a lot of water. So I would make water out of air. So I make electricity from the sun. With that electricity, I make water out of air. With that water, it would go into the pressure tank. That pressure tank would say, go to the water heater. The water heater was a heat pump water heater, which we would use the electricity from the sun to heat the water heater.
Right.
The byproduct of the water heater is air conditioning. So that's the only air conditioning we would use, is we'd pipe the air conditioning out of the water heater and into the house.
Yeah.
And then the shower you take a shower, and that shower water goes out to my fruit trees in the front yard. And that was all gravity fed.
Wow.
So make electricity, make water, heat the water with electricity from the sun, shower, and then feed the fruit trees.
Wow.
We had a compost toilet. The compost toilet is really what helped decrease the energy, or sorry, the water, because,
Water.
you use a lot of water to flush a toilet.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point the neighbors called because it smelled out a vent pipe that we had up at the roof that was close to their, they have a 2-story house next door. So the city started coming by. So we took that out and put in a toilet that has a sink on the top.
Oh,
And that was
wow.
another issue that they didn't like, is that we would wash our hands. And they said, well, you maybe washed your hands with half a gallon, not 0.7 gallons. So not all the water in the tank was gray water.
Uh-huh.
And I had enough water to flush the toilet with the rainwater and atmospheric water generation. And that's what I do now. So now that we're out of the program, all of my laundry and all of my toilet flushing is rainwater.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the laundry goes to the fruit trees as well.
Now, I am aware of the atmospheric water generation system. Did you come out with it yourself? I know there's an architect in Venice,
David Hertz.
David Hertz.
Yeah.
He has a system. Is this his system, or?
Yeah, and he went and he got one of the X Prizes. He didn't know about the X Prize. And I told him about it. And so then he bought part of a company, and then they were able to win the X Prize.
I see.
So he didn't create that. He bought that company. And it's the same technology pretty much. They use desiccant. They're using salt. Ours doesn't do that. Yeah.
Because his system provides potable water.
Yeah.
Right.
So does ours. So our system, I had it tested, third-party tested, to see, amount of aluminum or iron, or chlorine, everything else. And so I have those. We should put these on your website, but it has our water, and then I tested the city water because my machine is illegal to run your house on, but you have to use the city water, and so the city water has like chlorine, fluoride, lead, has all these things. And then our water, they calculate it in parts per million. And so it's like, oh, the amount of chlorine you're allowed to have is, say, I don't remember off the top of my head, but let's say it's like 80 to 120.
Wow.
Ours is non-detectable. The amount of aluminum might be like 15 to 60, whatever the number is. And ours is like 2. So every single time we're far below the threshold. Or non-detectable, non-detectable, non-detectable. So yeah, because the air doesn't have lead in it. The air doesn't have fluoride, it doesn't have chlorine, doesn't have heavy metals. And there's an air filter, and then it goes across a compressor, it goes through another filter, and then it has UV light, an inlet filter, a pre-filter, a carbon filter, reverse osmosis, mineralized to add the minerals, and then post-mineral filter. And then it goes to the top tank, and it has another UV light.
Wow.
So our water is heavily filtered, and it starts out what you and I are breathing. So yes, the air in LA is a little bit dirty, but we have all these filters. So it's the water's great. It's the only water I drink and have drank for many years.
Amazing. So can we talk about the petals that you did earn? You earned a place petal, and health and happiness petal, and beauty petal. How were they achieved?
Yeah, I mean, those items, the health and happiness is really, you can sit outside in nature. You have views from every window. We're in a zone where we can ride bikes. We connect to community. We continue to have workshops. So why we call it Campbell Collective is that we are running a thing called Second Sundays. So the second Sunday of every month, we had workshops and trainings. So we would do like a raised garden bed workshop and yoga, or a meditation workshop and breath work workshop. And so we're opening up the property for tours and community. And it's a place of connection and of people to be able to come and connect and collaborate. One of our neighbors, then the pandemic happened. So then once the pandemic happened, we stopped doing those workshops because we weren't gathering together. But one of my neighbors she loved the project so much, 4 doors down. She then
Mhm.
started making raised garden beds and revamped her whole garden. And she was going through some depression, and
Uh,
it really just brought her up and engaged her and brought her out of a funk. The next door
wow.
neighbor to her saw all that, which is
Yeah.
2 doors down from me. And she then started gardening a bunch. And now she went back to school
Oh,
to
wow.
be an arborist and a horticulturist. So she's getting her degree in horticulture when not those neighbors ever, were gardeners before.
That's that's incredible. Because
Yes, it's
the
been
ripple
fun to,
effect of what you did.
yeah, it's been great and connect to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the water I mentioned, we didn't get the pedal, but the water we disconnected the city water when I went to go work with I had LADWP come out to turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a picture, and the guy's like, "Don't take a picture of me. Why are you taking a picture?" I'm like, "No, I'm like turning off the city water for indefinitely." He's like, "Okay, just don't get my face in it." I'm like, "All right." Um, and so we even ran our kitchen water into the
Uh-huh.
garden, which is not usually recommended, but there's vegetarians on the property, so there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, meats and dairies.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked out pretty well. And as I said,
Mm-hmm.
the solar, and then we also pulled out, there's no natural gas. I took out the heater
Mm-hmm.
and water heater. We have beekeeping, so bees on site. We have
Right.
chickens on site. And yeah,
Are your chickens laying eggs?
yes, they lay eggs. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, in some areas of LA, you're not allowed to have chicken coop. So in Mar Vista, you're good to do that?
Yeah. So, yeah. Um, you're allowed to have chickens as long as they're not a nuisance to your neighbors. So you
Okay.
have to make sure that your neighbors are happy, which sometimes is a little bit hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sharing
And
the
then, but that goes back to like community health and wellness.
Yeah.
And so I have about 20 fruit trees.
Mm-hmm.
So fruit trees that we have is I have tangelo, mandarin, kumquat, fig, pomegranate, plum, apricot, fingerling lime, lemon, rosemary, orange, guava, banana, passion fruit, peach. I think I said plum,
Yeah,
walnut, grapefruit, guava.
wow.
I'm sure I've missed a few. Some aloe, lemon. So whenever I have abundance, I definitely am providing those to my neighbors, and
Sure.
sometimes they're providing some back.
Mm-hmm.
I have a peppercorn tree. So I'm taking one out this week and giving it to a neighbor.
Wow.
So I'm constantly giving things away to the community and neighbors.
Yeah.
One of the items is is that whenever I trim the pomegranate, if I just shove the clippings in with a little bit of honey
Yeah.
and into the ground, I'd say 4 out of 10 keep growing.
Wow.
You can also do an air rooting where you like strip a little bit of the branch and then add mulch and a little, like, get it nice and tight and add
Yeah.
water in there.
Yeah.
The branch will start to grow roots. Then you can cut the branch and then put it in the ground and you have a tree.
Wow.
So I have a lot of extra pomegranates and other plants because anytime I prune something, I shove them into the mulch, in the compost, water it, and I don't know, a third of them, depends on the plant. The fingerling limes, they don't do very well. The pomegranate does very well. So I always have an abundance of other plants that we provide to other neighbors, and we collect wood, and we build tables and benches and raise garden beds and chicken coops, and yeah.
So how long have you been at this property? How long did it take you to bring your property to this level?
Yeah, that's a good
I
question.
know it's not overnight.
No, and so I was in escrow to buy a property, and the property directly behind it went up for sale. So we're mid-block. And so I ended up buying that house as well. So the property is 2 different properties back to back. So the back property line they share, but they both have their own street and curb.
I see.
So it's 300 feet long by 45 feet wide. And this renovation is in the house that I'm not permanently living in right now. The Campbell Collective house. But right when the first thing I did when we bought it was put in the fruit trees in the front yard that make almost a fruit wall. You're
Wow.
supposed to have the fruit trees, have several feet of air between them.
Yeah.
I looked at what their spread was going to be, and I planted them intentionally to be touching each other all the way around to kind of make a wall, like a private kind
Wow.
of
Yeah.
area,
Uh-huh.
opposed to the proper tree, 3 feet, tree, 3 feet of space once they're
Right.
mature.
Right.
Yeah. So the first thing was to put those trees in. I
Uh-huh.
didn't have the gray water in at that time, but trees take a while to grow. So first for
Right.
the trees, and then I put FSC bamboo floor in, and then eventually I did a roof and solar, and then more rainwater catchments. So a lot of the stuff for LBC was done 2, 3, 4 years ago,
Uh-huh.
like the solar, but
Mm-hmm.
some of the things we did recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would say it's little by little. Also, it all costs money, right?
Yeah.
So a
Yes,
new
of
roof
course.
costs some money. Solar costs some money.
But so what was the year that you bought the property?
2013.
2013. So that's 10 years ago.
Yeah, so I've had chickens for probably 7 years, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. I've had
Mm-hmm.
bees for maybe 3 years. I've had rain catchment most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
but really it was like fruit trees in, and then keep doing all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have any challenges in implementing those from like neighbors or contractors? I mean, did you get any pushback
I
to
mean,
what you're
yes.
doing?
I mean, a lot of things, a lot of lessons learned. One is that the house that I'm at is on the Grandview side.
Mm-hmm.
We the goal was I want to add insulation. It's a 1920s house. The crawl space is about that high.
Yeah.
The attic is about that high, so you really can't get in there.
Wow.
And I hired some contractors to do the work, and they didn't put a pin. They did a crappy job. So I got to get under there. They're supposed to patch things. So yeah, I've had a variety of errors, I would say. But I've had a fun time building a lot of the stuff. I'm looking at some steps. Maybe I'll show you at the end here. But I have some stairs that go up to like a loft area that we built with scrap wood.
Right.
My workbench is scrap wood. The table I sit at to work at is all like upcycled wood. The fence in the backyard is upcycled wood. The chicken coop's upcycled wood. The gate's upcycled wood. The deck's upcycled wood. And a lot of lessons learned. The gray water system that we put in, we used too small connectors. So I've recently taken them out and put bigger connectors. Yeah.
So you did a lot of sweat equity yourself.
Oh, yeah. I would say most of the work we did ourselves, and most of it we probably did twice because we did it wrong the first time. Yeah.
Now, did you get any pushback from the city in terms of like having almost have a food forest, right?
I do have a food forest. The food forest, there's no pushback from the city. The pushback was my gray water system.
Oh.
And my neighbors had complained, and they complained because there's a vent for the compost toilet that goes up and then out the roof. And they have a 2-story house right next door, and their window is close enough.
Oh, that's the
and so we weren't smelling it, but they called, and an inspector showed up or left a notice, and I called him, and he's like, yeah, I need to come see, do you have a gray water system or compost? I'm like, oh, I have a gray water system, but it's a simple system. So there's 2 ways you can do gray water. One, you can legally install laundry to landscape without a permit, as long as you follow these like 10 or 11 steps. You have to have a 3-way valve. You have to have a standpipe. You have to have, you can't store the water. It has to be gravity fed. You have to have an outlet, and it has to have a cap. You have a cap, like 2 inches of air, inch outlet, 2 inches of air, mulch. So it goes into the ground and bugs can't get to it, or mosquitoes growing. So you can do laundry landscape without a permit, but there's also a thing called a simple system, which is about a 5-page application. Very easy. Anybody, if you know how to drive a car, you can do this. And you have to do a site plan, and you draw it out. And in that case, you can take your shower out to the landscape as well.
Oh, wow.
and you don't have to have an inspection.
Oh, really?
So I told him like, hey, yeah, I have a simple system. Here's my permit. It doesn't need an inspection. He's like, well, I want to inspect it anyhow. Like, okay, quickly. So we took the compost toilet out
Yeah,
at that time because we're gonna have an inspector snooping around.
I see.
One time I did build a deck in the front with upcycled material, but looked great. And we got a fine, like a $14 fine, because we didn't meet our front yard setback, our front yard height. So we had to
Oh,
rip it out.
mm-hmm.
But as far as sustainability, I would say the compost toilet is like the one that luckily they didn't write us up for that because we took it out before he showed up, but he was showing up because we had one. So for the Living Building Challenge, that's when we went to the toilet.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, it's a sink on the top, and I'm legally required to have a flush toilet.
Yeah.
And that flush toilet, but they're like, well, you need to use non-potable water. I'm like, yeah, we wash our hands. They're like, well, that's not the full flush. I'm like, yeah. So I think that goes back to intent. I produced and captured 140% of the amount of water that we ever used on site.
Wow.
And so I think in those cases, I get the rigor and you need to have a high standard,
Right.
but I made more water. I made enough water that I could have flushed the toilet the whole time.
Yeah.
So if you're to say, okay, you shouldn't have used that 0.2 gallons because only 0.5 is your hand washing or whatever.
Yeah.
I had that water. I made that water. The water was produced on site. It was captured by rainwater. Like I met the intent, and maybe there's a small window, but
yeah. That's amazing. I mean, even in the drought in Southern California, you were able to.
yeah. So what I should have done was just use high quality atmospheric water generation water to flush. Oh no, I could have used a city water to flush the toilet. So I could have used city water to flush the toilet and had that be 100% potable water flushing the toilet, and then wash my hands in the sink, and that goes to the fruit trees.
Right.
They would have preferred that I wash my hands in the sink, go to the fruit trees, and use city potable water for 100% of the toilet flushing, opposed to 70% hand washed and 30% city potable.
Right.
See how that doesn't make sense to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
you want me to use 100% potable
Right.
to flush the toilet versus
the toilet,
30%.
Yeah.
And that qualifies. Had I done that, had I not had the sink on top of the toilet, we would have got water pedal.
Water pedal. Wow. I mean,
had I wasted water,
yeah,
I would have got the water pedal.
Yeah, that is really I don't know, contradictory. But anyways, but like LBC Living Building Challenges, they're so progressive that I would imagine, you would have people's eyebrows raising, like, what are you guys doing? And
maybe I also think that then they should also be like, okay, the city came, you took out the compost toilet, so it's only a 4-month window. Redo those 4 months and don't wash your hands. So they don't have that feedback loop to be like, hey, we did all this effort, all this work.
Right.
If you don't like that, you'd rather me waste potable water to flush the toilet 100% and wash my hands over there. We'll do that, and we'll prove that we can do that. And we'll do that. We'll make up those 4 months. They didn't give you the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Which is also another, like, I have a hard time believing how they're gonna like really grow. Because I would say if 300 people applied, of those 300, yeah, maybe 50 to 100 shouldn't. But you're now disengaging with all the people. It takes so much effort, so much time, all this passion.
Right.
And sure, some of them probably really shouldn't have, but like, I'm never going to suggest it. I'm never going to do it again.
Really?
No.
Okay. Well, so what is your vision though? What is it that you envision for both for your home and in terms of your business, but as a whole, where do you think we're going with this whole built environment movement of, like, a lot of people are talking sustainability now, but there's definitely more conversation around regenerative projects. What is your vision? Where do you think we're going?
Yeah, I do think that we need to continue. to work with ILFI and others to maintain existing buildings. 50% of your carbon footprint is in building it, 50% is in running it.
Right.
Not every building, not every case, but 40 to 60, 50, 50, 60, 40.
Right.
So if that's the case, then we need to stop tearing down homes. We need to stop tearing down buildings, and we need to start keeping what we have and make it last longer. So get more life out of it. And with ILFI, that's not, you're punished for doing that. Doesn't make sense.
Right.
And I really think that, with EC3 and Tally and other, we're now at a place where we can really look at our EPDs and look at our carbon footprint. And so it's very exciting. That wasn't available 15 years ago, 20 years ago, to the extent that it is today. So we can really make informed decisions now that we couldn't have made before. And that's really exciting. You can run a house off grid with electricity. And I proved that you can have a water machine to go off grid as well. So, we have the resource. And I think atmospheric water generation today is where solar energy was in 1981 or something. Really expensive. It uses about 1.2 kilowatt hours per gallon. So, you're talking 40 cents a gallon. So it's not cheap.
Yeah.
But if you have your own solar, who cares? I mean, I'm making my own water, and then I'm using it twice or three times.
Right.
And also with the regenerative, showing community how to do that. I go to the farmer's market every week, and I have worked there. Therefore, I am allowed to trade with people at the farmer's market, because you can only do that if you work.
Those air quotes.
And so I come home with hundreds of dollars of free food every weekend. And I also create community around the property where friends of mine that are at the farmer's market, they have too many tomatoes during peak tomato time. I bring those home. I give them to my neighbors. I then broker deals to the local restaurants, or I bring it back, and me and friends, we put the tomatoes and the onions and whatever we have, whatever's abundant, and then we make a soup. We freeze the soups, and a week later, I take them back and I give them a jar of frozen soup, or I make a juice. I freeze the juice, I take it back, and so now I'm like, here's 1/10 of what you gave me last week, and they're like, great. I'm like, and here's some oranges, and here's some kumquats, here's some tangelos, some mandarins, here's some eggs, here's some honey. And the carbon footprint of the food from the farmer's market is just that much better. I was just looking at something I was eating the other day in a package that somebody had, and it was grown in Mexico, sent to Austin, packaged in Austin, and then I'm eating it in LA, and I'm like, I love growing my own food. The other thing about growing your own food is that I go out and I pick what I want to eat. So I can cut lettuce that I'm going to eat today, and so there's far less food waste. Because if I go to the store or I go to the farmer's market and I bring home lettuce, it might wilt, it might go bad. Then I feed it to my chickens, so I don't feel so bad. I don't have food waste, because all of our food waste, either the chickens eat it, or it's composted, and then it's turned to nutrients, and I give those to the trees.
Right.
So it's really a closed loop.
Yeah.
But I think when you grow your own food, there's far less waste. So if I'm on vacation or I'm somewhere for a few weeks, there's just a lot of food waste, because you just don't get into it in time.
Tell me about it.
But if you're picking it when you want it, then it's always fresh.
Yeah.
And then if you have a property where you have compost, we have 3 compost piles. One I'm always adding to, one I'm letting brew, and one I'm taking from.
Ready.
And so I always have fresh nutrients to use. I always have one that I'm adding and one that's like decomposing.
What I love about this whole story with you is that you're in the middle of LA. You're not in the rural area doing this, but you're in the middle, and I know exactly where you are. That's my neighborhood too. So I know how rare that is. Now, are you done with this project, or do you have more things to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're actually putting that pond in right now that I mentioned. So we actually moved the bees off site this morning. So the bees are a little bit activated today. A couple of people got stung. That's what happens. And because we're going to put in this water feature that will be the storage of rainwater, but also when you turn it on as the water feature, I'm oxygenating the water, I'm churning the water, and I'm going to put my rainwater in there.
Oh, wow.
And then I will also, there may shower and laundry water will do the laundry, the landscape per the code to go out if it happens to seep through a bunch of sand and
Wow.
find its way into that pond. Then maybe my shower water and laundry water will find its way in there too. And so I'm doing some upgrades because I had too many rainwater locations. So to drain the water out and move it to a different location, that's one big lesson learned, is to have as few locations as possible to really minimize the amount of time it takes me to use and drain and move and drain.
Right.
And try and manage all the water. It just, the least amount of locations, the better.
So you getting it more efficient, basically.
Yeah, and creating a water feature. I mean, rain tanks aren't. I've never heard anybody say rain tanks are sexy or like, they're not. Nobody dresses up as a rain tank for Halloween.
Yeah.
So I still have some rain storage, especially for the first flush. But now my rain storage will be a landscape feature that's beautiful. And then there's a pool on the property that I've been meaning to decommission and turn into a third of it into a pond and like a natural swimming hole.
Right.
So we're in the process of that. So what I did was I used the pool water over the drought. After the Living Building Challenge window, I took the water, and over 3 months, I just started using the water across the property, flushing the toilet, doing the laundry, filtering it, and watering everything, drained all the water. And then this last winter, all the rains that filled the pool back up almost halfway, used all that too. So the pool's been a water storage for the last couple of years.
Wow.
And now we're in the process, but again, it takes money to create a pool that's a natural pond swimming hole. And then I'll use the other part of the pool for some water storage as well.
I see.
So there's a few more things. So a pond, swimming hole, centralizing some of the stuff. There's always stuff to do, but the tour is really pushing me to finalize that list that's been there for so long, and you just slowly going down it. We're like, the other thing is that I don't grow a lot of vegetables anymore because I get all my vegetables for free at the farmer's market. And so you come here like, oh, you don't have any vegetables? Like, well, I get them as many as I want for free every week at the farmer's market by taking all my fruits. And fruits are so much easier to grow, and fruit is much nicer with gray water. Gray water to veggies, they're a little bit more finicky. And how do you get the gray water to them if they're in raised garden beds in the ground? Also, the chickens like to eat the vegetables. They don't eat the trees. So yeah.
That's really exciting. I'm so looking forward to the USGBC-LA's green home tours. And
well, I'll give you a link. I'll give you a link. So it's November 1st, I think at 4 or 4:30.
Yes.
And I'll provide you guys a link.
Yes, I have the link. I have the link.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You can put that in there.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. This is so much fun talking to you. And I can't
look forward to having you.
Come to the property and take a look and hang out. This was Izumi Tanaka with Home Green Homes Podcast. Until the next episode.